Here's my surprise for you. You're fired. Effective immediately. That sentence should have shattered me. But instead, as I stood frozen in my boss's son's glass office, surrounded by fake birthday decorations and a stale chocolate cake no one touched, all I could feel was stillness. A cold, clean pause. He said it with a smirk, as if he'd just gifted me a designer purse. Go ahead and pack your things, Jesse. We'll have I revoke your access in 10. I nodded once. No arguments. No tears. Just quiet. I turned, walked past the stunned receptionist, who blinked as if unsure if this was some cruel office prank, and stepped into the elevator without looking back. The metal doors closed. My reflection stared back at me. Today was my 35th birthday. It had started so differently. My husband, Noah, had made me coffee at 6:30 a.m., singing Happy Birthday off-key while our 2 rescue dogs danced around our feet. He had kissed my forehead and said, "Just get through work. Then the real birthday begins." That morning, I thought the real birthday meant dinner reservations or maybe a surprise weekend getaway. Turns out, it was something entirely different. Now, sitting in the driver's seat of my car, my work badge still dangling from my rearview mirror, I called Noah. He picked up on the first ring. "Happy birthday, baby," he said cheerfully. "What time should I pick you up?" "I'm already out," I replied quietly. "I got fired." Silence. Then, "Today?" 10 minutes ago. A pause. "Was it Darren?" "Yes." Another pause. Then Noah chuckled, not with amusement, but with a strange sense of knowing. "Good," he said. I blinked. "Good?" He exhaled. "Jess, we talked about this. You were never safe there. You knew it. I knew it. You were carrying that company on your back while Darren played executive cosplay." He wasn't wrong. I had joined Everland Homes 5 years ago when it was a small but respected architectural firm known for its integrity and clean designs. I was brought in as a senior planner, but within a year, I'd modernized their project flow, integrated safety and compliance across all departments, and saved the company hundreds of thousands in failed inspections. When Gregory, the original CEO and Darren's father, was in charge, I was respected, promoted, heard. Then came Gregory's stroke, and Darren, the son with a business degree and a trust fund, was groomed to take over. In less than 6 months, he'd cut the legal review team, hired a PR agency no one needed, and turned my department into his personal scapegoat. He forgot to invite me to key meetings, claimed my reports were too technical. And now, on my birthday, he gave me the final gift: termination. By the time I got home, Noah had already changed out of his work clothes. He was standing in the kitchen with 2 glasses of champagne. "What's this?" I asked, setting down my keys. He smiled. "To endings." I blinked. "And to what happens 4 hours from now," he added, clinking his glass against mine. "Noah, what are you talking about?" He didn't answer, just kissed my cheek and said, "Just trust me." 3 hours and 46 minutes later, my phone buzzed on the couch beside me. Missed call. Then another. Then 5 more. By the time I glanced at the screen, it showed 98 missed calls. Every single one from Everland. The office manager, 3 department heads, even Darren himself. And just like that, I realized something. This wasn't just a firing. This was a mistake. One they couldn't afford to make. Before I tell you what happened next, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Many viewers follow these stories and forget to hit the bell. And trust me, the way this unfolds, you won't want to miss the next part. Back to the story. That night, as Noah and I sat under string lights in our backyard, he finally explained what he'd known for weeks. "Darren approved the Ridgeview deal last Friday," he said, "and he submitted plans under your name, but he altered your original designs." My stomach dropped. "Noah, that's illegal." He nodded. "And dangerous." My hands trembled. Ridgeview was a $22 million housing development. One structural flaw, one missed code, and... He forged your sign-off, Jess. That's when it hit me. By firing me, Darren hadn't just rid himself of someone competent. He'd erased the only person who could defend what came next. And that, I realized, wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning. I barely slept that night. Not from grief or anxiety, but from the sheer rage of what I'd just learned. Fired on my birthday, yes. But more than that. Used. My name, my credentials, my reputation, all weaponized by a man who couldn't design a fire escape without consulting YouTube. Darren had forged my approval on the Ridgeview development plans. And now, with me out of the picture, no one was left to answer questions when things went wrong. Because, trust me, they would go wrong. The Ridgeview project had been my baby. I spent 6 months refining those plans, making sure every elevation, every code spec, every material choice was flawless. I knew the soil grades. I'd walked the site myself. I flagged the unstable perimeter wall that Darren had insisted was just cosmetic. So when Noah showed me the submitted blueprints that night, stamped with my digital signature, but missing key safety features I'd fought to include, I knew exactly what had happened. Darren had stripped my version down to something cheaper, faster, and more dangerous. He thought no one would notice. And then he fired me, probably hoping I'd vanish quietly, with no reason to ever look back. By 8 a.m. the next morning, my phone had racked up 119 missed calls. The latest voicemail was from Susan, the compliance officer. Jesse, I don't know what's going on, but we can't access the Ridgeview system files. It keeps asking for the primary architect override. Darren is... He's panicking. Please call me back. Please. I didn't call back. Instead, I sent a single text to Susan. Speak to your legal team before contacting me again. This message will be saved. And then I picked up my bag, slid my laptop inside, and turned to Noah. I need a favor. He raised an eyebrow. I need a meeting. With someone high enough to take this seriously. The Ridgeview contract was submitted to the city. Who handles post-approval compliance checks? Noah didn't even blink. My boss, Gina. I'll call her. 2 hours later, I sat across from Gina Montoya in a quiet conference room at the Department of Urban Development. A sharp woman in her early 50s with clear glasses and a no-nonsense attitude. I laid out everything. The original Ridgeview plans. My actual version. Darren's altered submission. The forged timestamp from my login credentials, which I proved had occurred while I was on vacation 3 weeks prior. Gina didn't interrupt once. Just took notes, nodded slowly, and finally said, Jesse, what you're showing me isn't just unethical. It's criminal. If those homes were built with these specs and something failed, families could die, I said flatly. She tapped her pen. I'm going to flag the Ridgeview permit for emergency review. And you're going to need legal representation. If your name was forged, you're not responsible. But the optics could get messy. I nodded. I'm ready. Back at home, Noah handed me a printed email. Subject: Urgent. Jesse. Please call me. From Gregory R. Langford, founder and former CEO, Everland Homes. I hadn't spoken to Gregory since his stroke the previous year. We'd exchanged a few polite texts during his recovery, but he hadn't been involved in day-to-day operations since Darren took over. Noah read my hesitation. You should talk to him, he said quietly. He's not like Darren. So I called. Jesse. Gregory's voice rasped through the line, weaker than I remembered, but still sharp. What happened? You mean, besides being fired illegally and having my signature forged on $1 million project? Silence. Then softly, I'm sorry. I never should have handed him control. I let the silence hang before replying. It's done now. Can you meet me? I'm not interested in coming back, Gregory. I'm not asking you to. I just need to talk. Please. I agreed. We met later that afternoon at a small cafe, far from downtown. Gregory looked older, thinner, but regret clung to him like a second skin. I built that company for 30 years, he said, and my son undid it in less than one. I thought he just needed structure. I didn't realize he needed a leash. I said nothing. Gregory continued. Susan told me what he did. He's denying it, of course. Said you sabotaged the files. I laughed bitterly. Of course he did. He leaned forward. Jesse, if you pursue this legally, the company will fall. You know that. I looked him in the eye. That's not my problem. He swallowed. What if I offered you something else? I'm listening. But before he could speak, my phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. This one from Darren himself. Jesse, look, maybe we can fix this. I didn't mean for it to go this way. We could talk. Come back. I'll undo the termination. We'll call it a miscommunication. Miscommunication. I ended the call and looked back at Gregory. They're scared, I said. And they should be. I didn't respond to Darren's message. Not out of strategy, at least not at first. But because I physically couldn't. My hands shook too much. The man who fired me with a smirk on my birthday now wanted to undo it like it was a bad calendar invite. Miscommunication, he said. As if terminating someone, forging signatures, and risking public safety was a typo. He had no idea that the city had already frozen the Ridgeview project. No idea that Gina had opened a formal inquiry. And no idea that I wasn't coming back. Not ever. The problem was, the deeper I got into what had happened, the more I realized something chilling. It wasn't just Ridgeview. That evening, Noah sat across from me at the kitchen table with a folder full of printouts. These are Darren's permit submissions over the last 6 months, he said. I pulled them from public records. Just compare them. One by one, I laid out the blueprints. One by one, the pattern became clear. Cut costs, lower specs, remove redundancies, shorten inspection timelines. And every time, a signature. Mine. Or someone else's from the design team. Names of people I knew had no idea they were being used. I think Ridgeview was just the first to almost hit the wall, I whispered. Noah nodded grimly. We need to take this beyond the city. You mean the state board? I mean the licensing bureau, the ethics committee, anyone who will hold him accountable. The next day, I spoke with a construction ethics investigator. I didn't want to go public yet. I wasn't looking for fame. I wasn't out for blood. I just wanted the truth out. And the risk to stop. But truth doesn't come quietly. By Thursday morning, a local news site ran the headline. Whistleblower flags major safety violations in $22 million Ridgeview development. My name wasn't mentioned, but the quotes, the documents, those were mine. Within hours, 3 more outlets picked it up. City council members issued statements of deep concern. And Gregory called again. Jesse, I don't blame you. But Darren, he's spiraling. He fired 2 more people yesterday. Legal's a mess. Clients are threatening to pull contracts. He paused. They want to talk to you. I stiffened. They? The board. No. Jesse, I don't need an apology from a board that let this happen. They watched him dismantle everything. Gregory sighed. Then, what do you want? I didn't answer. Because honestly, I didn't know yet. That night, Noah and I finally talked about something we'd both been dancing around. What if this becomes bigger than we expected? He asked. What if people start coming after you? You mean legally? I mean professionally. Personally. Retaliation. Darren's the type. I nodded slowly. Then I'll need protection. From the closet, I pulled out an old binder. One I hadn't opened since I freelanced during grad school. Inside were sketches, flowcharts, system notes. A full outline for a project management system I'd once dreamed of building. One that would eliminate the need for manual tracking, flag inconsistencies in submissions, and store backup approval trails. I had stopped working on it once Everland offered me a stable role. But now Now it felt like the right time. I'm not going back, I said to Noah, but I'm going to build something better, something they'll need. 2 days later, I registered my company, Proofline Project Systems. Within 48 hours, I had a consultation request. Not from Everland, of course, from one of their biggest competitors. They'd seen the news, they'd read between the lines. By the following week, 2 more firms reached out, quietly, discreetly. They didn't want to get caught in the headlines, but they did want better systems. Systems I could build. Meanwhile, Everland was burning from the inside. Susan, the compliance officer, messaged me late one night. "Jesse, everything is falling apart. Darren's been removed from daily operations, but we can't recover Ridgeview. City says it's unsalvageable. We might lose our license." Then another message, this time from Gregory. "They want to offer you something. Not employment, a contract. You oversee project integrity, full autonomy. We'll pay. Just help us recover. Please." It was tempting. Not because I wanted to help them, I didn't. But because I knew what I'd built, what I was about to build, was the future. And part of me wanted them to pay to access it. Before I replied, I called Gina at the city office. Hypothetically, I asked, if a private company partnered with the city to build a transparent project verification tool, could it replace the current filing system? She didn't hesitate. If it worked? Absolutely. Jesse, we'd pay for it. The real gift Darren gave me wasn't that text message on my birthday. It was the fire he lit under me, the chance to rebuild, not just my career, but the rules themselves. And now? Now I wasn't knocking on anyone's door. I was building the damn building myself. I didn't respond to Gregory's message right away. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew exactly what I wanted to say. And I wanted to make sure every word was delivered at the right time, with the right leverage. 2 days after he reached out offering a contract, I sent a short reply. "We can discuss terms. My assistant will coordinate a meeting. I'll bring my conditions. I suggest you bring yours." Noah raised an eyebrow when he read it. "You have an assistant now?" I shrugged. "Technically, it's my cousin Rachel, but she's good with scheduling and knows not to take crap from anyone." We both laughed. But beneath the humor, I felt something new. Stability. Not in the way a steady job offers, but in something deeper. I had control over my path now. And no one, especially not Darren, could take that away again. The meeting was set for a Friday afternoon in a neutral downtown conference space. I arrived early, dressed in black slacks and a crisp navy blouse. Confident, but not flashy. I didn't want to be underestimated, but I also didn't want to walk in looking like revenge incarnate. That's not what this was anymore. Gregory arrived with 2 board members and the firm's attorney. No Darren. "Where is he?" I asked flatly, not bothering with small talk. "Removed from decision-making," Gregory replied. "He's on indefinite leave while the ethics investigation runs its course." I nodded once. "I read your proposal," he continued, sliding a printed copy of my terms across the table. "You'd create and oversee an entirely new project integrity system, independent from our operations. You'd report only to the board." "That's correct." "You'd have access to every file, every permit, every blueprint. You'd audit everything before it goes to the city?" "Yes." "And if we object to one of your flags?" "Then it doesn't move forward. That's non-negotiable." The board attorney leaned forward. "You're asking for a lot of power, Ms. Reyes. I'm offering a lot of liability protection. And frankly, after what happened, you need someone the city trusts. Right now, that's me." There was a pause. Gregory looked at the others, then back at me. "What's your rate?" I opened my folder and slid over a typed number. It wasn't outrageous, but it wasn't cheap either. The attorney looked like he swallowed a lemon, but Gregory didn't flinch. "Approved," he said. But I wasn't done. "One more condition." "Of course," Gregory replied. "Darren completes full retraining. Every module I assign. He doesn't touch another project until I sign off. They looked stunned. You want to supervise him? One of the board members asked. I want to educate him. If he's going to stay in this industry, he's going to learn to do it right. Or not at all. Another long pause. Finally, Gregory nodded. Done. I walked out of that room with a signed agreement in hand. It wasn't a return to Everland. It was a restructuring of the power dynamic. They needed me. And this time I was walking in on my terms, with documented authority and legal insulation. They couldn't fire me. They couldn't override me. They couldn't ignore me. And Darren? Well, Darren was about to be my student. A week later, I sent him his first assignment, Module 1, Fundamentals of Project Integrity and Compliance. He didn't reply, but 2 days later, the module was returned. Completed? Accurate. I sent the next one. And the next, for 6 weeks straight. Every submission came back on time, sometimes with questions. At first, I assumed it was performative, a damage control act to rebuild his image. But slowly, I started noticing a shift. His tone changed. His responses became more thoughtful. In a few cases, he even caught things I hadn't flagged. Was it real? Or just a performance? I wasn't sure. Meanwhile, Proofline Project Systems was growing. After the news of my Everland contract broke, 2 more city departments reached out for consultations. I hired Rachel full-time, then an intern, then a software developer to start building the verification tool I had outlined in that old binder. It was happening. Bit by bit, I was building what I had once only imagined, a system that wouldn't just catch mistakes, but prevent them. One that didn't need someone like me to manually verify everything. One that made ethical choices the standard, not the exception. One afternoon, Gregory called. Jesse, we have a request. What kind? A client wants to know if you'd consider presenting the new project verification process at the Ridgeview Town Hall. I hesitated. That's a public meeting. Yes, and you're the one person who can restore trust. Trust. That word again. But I thought about it, and I realized it wasn't just about Everland anymore. The community had a right to hear from the person making sure this mess didn't happen again. I'll do it, I said finally, but only if Darren's there too. The Ridgeview Town Hall was scheduled for a Wednesday evening in the community center gymnasium. Folding chairs, fluorescent lights, and one long plastic table where Gregory, a city official, and I would sit. It was nothing glamorous, but it might have been the most important meeting of my professional life. I arrived early. The room was already filling up with residents. Some angry, some confused, some just curious. These were the people who had trusted Everland Homes to build their futures, their starter homes, their retirements, their children's backyards. And for a while, that trust had been badly misplaced. Gregory arrived next, followed by a staff member from the city's Department of Planning and Zoning. And then, almost exactly at 6:55, Darren walked in. He didn't look like the Darren I remembered. No smug smile, no expensive blazer, no phone glued to his hand. Just a plain blue button-down, sleeves rolled, and a manila folder under one arm. He gave a brief nod in my direction and took a seat in the audience. Interesting. At 7:02 p.m., Gregory stood and addressed the crowd. I'd like to thank everyone for being here. Tonight is about transparency, about answering your questions and owning our mistakes. That begins with introducing the person who's been rebuilding our project integrity system, Jesse Reyes. I stepped up to the microphone, heart thudding against my ribs. I'd spoken at plenty of meetings in the past, but this wasn't just professional. This was personal. Good evening, I began. I know some of you might recognize my name from recent reports. I was a lead project planner at Everland for 5 years. Last month, I discovered that my name had been used without my permission to approve project plans I didn't create. After I brought this to the city's attention, an investigation confirmed multiple compliance violations, many of which affected the Ridgeview development. Murmurs rippled through the room. I continued calmly. Since then, I've been contracted as an independent integrity consultant to audit and rebuild all processes connected to Ridgeview. What that means is every revised plan, every material order, and every safety compliance check now passes through a new system, one that I control. A woman in the second row raised her hand. Why should we trust Everland again? Why should we believe anything now? It was the question I had expected. I nodded. You shouldn't take anything on faith, I said. But you can verify. We've created a public dashboard, updated weekly, with plan approvals, inspection dates, and compliance sign-offs. You'll know exactly what's happening and when. Another hand shot up, then another. Questions about soil stability, drainage, electrical planning. I answered each one thoroughly, not defensive, just factual. And that's when Darren stood. Everyone turned. He walked slowly to the front of the room, glanced at Gregory, then looked directly at me. May I speak? He asked. Gregory hesitated. I nodded once. Darren stepped to the mic. My name is Darren Langford. Many of you know me as the acting director of Everland. Some of you knew my father when he ran this company with integrity. I did not honor that legacy. A beat of silence. I altered project submissions to cut costs. I overrode safety protocols. I used other people's credentials to approve plans that wouldn't have passed inspection. I believed I could manage the fallout. I was wrong. The gym was utterly silent now. I was removed from operations after the investigation, but over the last 6 weeks, I've been retraining, under the guidance of Ms. Reyes. Not because anyone forced me to, but because I had to understand how badly I'd failed. And because if this project is ever going to mean something again, it starts with accountability. He turned back to the audience. I know I can't erase what I've done, but I'm committed to fixing it, one step at a time. He returned to his seat. No applause, no outbursts, just a heavy, thoughtful silence. After the meeting, a few residents approached me. Some still skeptical, others quietly grateful. One elderly man said, If you're the one fixing this, I'll sleep better tonight. That meant more than any corporate title I'd ever held. Darren approached just as I was packing up. I meant what I said, he offered. I studied him. Good, because this isn't over. Integrity doesn't happen once. It has to be maintained, every step, every day. He nodded. I understand. As he turned to leave, I called after him. Why did you really stand up there? He looked back. Because you were right. Not just about the project, about me. I didn't deserve the position I was given. And I never earned the trust I was handed. But maybe I can earn some back. I didn't respond. Not yet. Because trust, like integrity, is something built, not given. And it was still under construction. 3 months passed. Ridgeview was officially reinstated, this time under strict oversight, weekly public audits, and triple verification systems. Construction resumed slowly, cautiously, under the weight of everything that had nearly gone wrong. But something had changed. Not just the project, not just the company, me. I was no longer waking up wondering if I'd be blindsided at a morning meeting or have my ideas ignored in favor of someone else's ego. I wasn't just working for someone anymore. I was working on something. Something that mattered. Proofline Project Systems had secured 4 new municipal contracts. My system was being piloted in 2 counties. City officials were recommending it as a benchmark model. I was hiring full-time staff. And for the first time in my career, I wasn't chasing approval. I was setting the standard. One afternoon in early spring, I was invited to speak at a regional architecture and compliance conference. Nothing huge, just a panel discussion about ethics in urban development. I almost said no. But then I thought about the Jessie from a year ago. The one who got fired on her birthday, who left the office without raising her voice, who quietly shut the door behind her while everyone else clapped for a man who didn't know half of what she did. And I decided to show up. When I finished my talk, a young woman approached me. Early 20s, anxious but determined. Hi, I just wanted to say your story, what you shared today. It reminded me of something I'm going through. I work under someone who keeps taking credit for my work. I thought maybe that was just the industry. I smiled gently. Number, that's not the industry. That's just someone hoping you'll stay quiet. She blinked. So what do I do? I handed her my card. You document everything. You protect your work, and you start building something no one can take from you. She held the card like it was gold. Maybe to her, it was. Back home that evening, Noah grilled dinner while I watched the sun dip behind our newly finished fence. Our fixer-upper had become a haven, a little rough around the edges, but ours. He looked up from the grill. You know, it's been exactly 6 months since Darren fired you. I laughed softly. Feels like a lifetime ago. He raised an eyebrow. If you could go back, would you still walk out the same way? No question, I replied. But this time I wouldn't wait so long to stand up for myself. He handed me a plate and we sat down on the porch steps. You didn't just stand up, he said. You built something stronger than what they destroyed. I paused, taking in his words, then pulled out my phone. There was a message from Gregory. Jesse, board approved the citywide protocol expansion. We're adopting your system for all projects going forward. Congratulations. Below that, another from Darren. Completed Module 12. Site team caught a design error today, because I flagged it first. Thought you'd want to know I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I sat in the quiet, listening to the dogs rustling in the yard, the sound of traffic in the distance, the world moving forward. Calm, but not still. I thought about everything that had happened. The text on my birthday, the forging of my name, the silence I'd chosen over outrage, the system I built from an old binder, late nights, and a whole lot of bitterness turned into purpose. I didn't burn Everland to the ground, but I rebuilt the ground they stood on my terms, with my tools, and no one could take that away. People ask me sometimes if I ever forgave Darren. The truth? I don't know. Maybe forgiveness isn't always the point. Maybe it's about creating enough distance between the person you were and the person you've become that their power fades on its own. What I do know is this. Revenge doesn't always look like scorched earth. Sometimes it looks like leadership. Sometimes it looks like walking back into the room, not to beg for your job, but to rewrite the way the job is done. Sometimes it looks like watching someone learn the lessons they once mocked you for knowing. If you've made it to the end of this story, thank you. You probably understand something a lot of people overlook, that the greatest revenge is not in making someone pay. It's in making yourself unshakable. It's in using what was meant to destroy you as the foundation for something stronger, more ethical, more respected, and fully your own. So here's to being fired on your birthday, and to becoming the kind of person they have to call back, only to realize you no longer need to answer. I didn't expect the email. It came at 5:18 a.m., just as I was finishing a quarterly forecast that no one had asked for but everyone needed. Subject line, celebration weekend, private flight itinerary attached. The body was short. You've been doing incredible work. The CEO wants to recognize you personally. Please pack for 3 days. Dress code, business casual to semi-formal. No explanation, no hint, just a PDF of a flight to Aspen and a note from corporate affairs. I stared at the screen, blinking. I'd worked for Trident Systems for 5 years. Started as a contractor, climbed fast, delivered faster. I had scaled our analytics department from 2 interns and a broken Tableau license to a multi-million-dollar intelligence hub supporting 42 enterprise clients. But no one ever said, thank you. Not like this. My name is Kelly. And I've never liked surprises. especially the ones that start with champagne and end with betrayal. The jet was sleek, white, and cold on the inside, like a hospital dressed up for prom. I sat near the back, quietly sipping citrus water while a flight attendant offered hot towels and compliments that felt memorized. Across from me sat the CEO, Graham Telford, the man with a watch worth my student loans and a smile that never reached his eyes. His wife, Clarice, was flipping through a fashion magazine like we weren't even there. And next to her, their daughter, Zara, 19, barely. Long lashes, luxury nails, and a tablet she didn't look up from once until we landed. The same Zara who'd posted last week about how real jobs are for people who gave up. I'd rolled my eyes. Now I was sitting next to her, buckled into a jet bearing the Trident logo. The resort in Aspen was the kind that didn't show up on Google Maps. Private chalets, heated floors, fireplaces lit before you even thought of wood. They gave me a suite with a view of snow-covered trees and a handwritten note. "We're proud of you. Let's toast to the future." GT. For a second, I let myself believe it. That maybe they saw me. That maybe I wasn't just the fixer behind the curtain anymore. That night, the Telfords hosted a dinner in the main lodge. 10 people, all executive leadership. I wore a tailored emerald dress I hadn't had a reason to put on in 2 years. Graham stood when I walked in, arms wide, his signature grin on full display. "Kelly," he beamed. "Come sit, right here next to Zara." I smiled politely. My stomach coiled. Dinner started with champagne, flowed into lobster, and ended with stories about how far we'd come. Clarice praised Zara's eye for vision. Zara talked about her TikTok growth like it was an MBA. Then Graham stood, raised his glass, and cleared his throat. "We're here to celebrate not just the work Kelly's done," he said, "but the direction we're going." He turned to me, smile tight. "You've been incredible. Truly. You carried this company through some tough winters." I nodded, wary. "But the world's changing," he continued. "And we're evolving too. Which is why, as of next quarter, Zara will be stepping in as Executive Vision Officer." The room was still. He said it like it was a gift, like he was offering me a sunrise. But my chest hollowed. "She's the future," he added, still smiling. "You're the past." He lifted his glass. "Cheers to new energy." I raised mine too, calm, silent, and said, "Cheers to the future." Because what they didn't know, what no one at that table remembered, was that I had once read the contract better than anyone. 5 years ago, I had negotiated a clause. Buried in legal pages no one else had bothered to scan. A clause that granted me 3.2% equity, convertible and with full voting rights. In exchange for proprietary system architecture I built when the company couldn't afford outside developers. Graham signed it himself. I still had the scanned PDF and the email thread archived. No one paid attention back then, because I was just Kelly from operations. And that's exactly how I wanted it. When dinner ended, I stayed back, stared at the fire long after the others left. Zara had smirked as she walked out. "Don't worry," she'd said lightly. "I'll make sure the interns still loop you in." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because what she didn't understand, what none of them understood, was that leadership isn't just about slogans and followers. It's about foundations. And I built this one, from the ground up. The real celebration hadn't even started yet. I flew home on Sunday evening. No driver, no follow-up message, no thank you. Just a text from Zara. "Don't forget to forward me your files. We'll set up time next week to go over handoff." Like I was an assistant. Like the past 5 years were bullet points on a slide deck she could delete. I didn't respond. Instead, I stared out the plane window and let silence do the talking. Sometimes silence is the loudest answer you can give. Monday morning, I walked into Trident HQ like it was any other day. No farewell party, no company-wide announcement, just a few half smiles from people who had clearly heard whispers but didn't know how to ask. Luis from product gave me a subtle nod. Sarah from compliance avoided eye contact. I made my way to my office, still mine for now, and sat down at the same desk where I'd sketched out our first predictive model on the back of a napkin. I opened my laptop. My credentials still worked. No one had cut me off. Not yet. My inbox had already started shifting. Zara had forwarded an email chain with the subject line, Marketing Refresh Strategy, Next Gen Positioning. It was full of buzzwords. Words like authenticity and disruption and brand reimagination, but no mention of our clients. No reference to the analytics platform I'd built. No understanding of how our legacy systems actually functioned. That's when I opened a folder labeled Foundations Archive. Inside it was everything they didn't realize I still had. Back in 2018, we were 2 quarters from collapse. We couldn't afford third-party tools, so I built our internal dashboard suite from scratch. The deal was simple. If I built it fast, Graham would give me a stake. He even typed it himself. 3.2% in Class B shares with voting privileges if the system proved viable. I still had the contract. It wasn't buried in legalese. It was clean, precise, and signed. At the time, I thought of it as a symbolic thank you. But when the company got its Series B around the following year, my 3.2% became real money. By the time Zara was learning how to upload YouTube videos, I was stabilizing revenue pipelines during COVID. And yet they were ready to erase me like chalk on a boardroom wall. I spent the rest of Monday quietly downloading documentation, not because I was planning to sue, but because I knew I'd need leverage. Then I forwarded a message to our general counsel. Subject: Clarification on shareholder voting rights. All I wrote was, per my 3.2% Class B shares granted 2018 attached, please confirm voting procedure if strategic leadership changes are made without board resolution. He responded 47 minutes later. Hi, Kelly. Reviewing now. Thank you for raising this. That's when I knew they'd forgotten. Because if they remembered, legal would have blocked me before I ever reached my desk. On Tuesday, Zara strolled in like she'd been born in the boardroom. She was in my office before I'd even finished my first coffee. Hey, she said brightly, perching on the edge of my desk like a sorority president handing out party invites. I'm setting up a vision workshop for Friday. We'll go over what you've built and what I plan to build on top of it. Sounds productive, I said, sipping slowly. I'm also restructuring teams a bit. Younger energy, more agile. No offense, but I think some of the people here are too stuck in their ways. I nodded. You don't agree? She asked, eyes narrowing slightly. I just think foundations matter, I said. You can't remodel the house if you don't know how the plumbing works. She rolled her eyes, then smiled. I guess we'll see. Yes, we would. Later that day, HR sent me a transition outline. No formal demotion, just subtle suggestions that I should support the rebrand initiative and step back from strategic planning. It was dressed up like a promotion in mentoring, but I knew what it was. They wanted me to fade out gracefully, quietly, without making waves. By Wednesday, I'd seen enough. Zara announced a new UI concept to the whole dev team without once speaking to anyone who'd worked on our architecture. Her wireframes were flashy. The colors clashed. The logic flow was broken, but everyone nodded because her last name was Telford. That night, I sat in my apartment, the city lights glowing below, and opened a new folder. Leverage, Phase 1. Inside, I dropped 3 things. The original equity agreement system diagrams I authored with full timestamps. An internal audit memo showing my platform had a 99.3% uptime over 4 years. I wasn't going to destroy them. But I wasn't going to let them destroy me either. They flew me to Aspen to celebrate my work. But they didn't realize that I was the work. That every line of code, every successful contract, every functioning system was stitched with my fingerprint. I didn't need a seat at the table. I owned part of the floor it stood on. And soon they were going to remember exactly who I was. Thursday morning started quiet. Too quiet. There was no meeting on my calendar, No urgent Slack messages and no leadership updates. It was the kind of silence that doesn't feel like peace. It feels like strategy. The kind of silence that comes right before a storm. I walked into the office like I always did. Neutral blouse, neat hair, black coffee in hand. Professional, unbothered, unseen. Zara was already in my office. Again. Feet on the desk, earbuds in, laptop open to a Canva page full of Core 2.0 rebranding slides. Stock photos of smiling 20-somethings, fake diversity, and meaningless taglines like, "Tomorrow starts now." She didn't even look up. "Need something?" she said. I smiled calmly. "I just came to get my charger." "Oh," she said, like I was maintenance. "Check the drawer." No mention of the system migration she'd announced yesterday. No concern about client transition, legacy data, or the support structure still running behind the scenes. She thought all she needed was a new logo and a few buzzwords. She thought legacy meant outdated. But what she didn't realize was that legacy meant built to last. Back at my desk, Luis popped his head in. "You see the ops memo?" he asked. "No," I said. "What memo?" He handed me a printout. Zara's first real executive action. Restructure of internal ops, merging support with product, and, most shocking of all, a proposal to outsource infrastructure management. Outsourcing. I felt my chest tighten. That infrastructure was the core of our client promises. Trident's whole value proposition was reliability in complexity. Our clients didn't hire us for sleek dashboards. They stayed because we kept their systems running when no one else could. Luis looked pale. She wants to move back-end to a firm in Toronto. They quoted half our internal cost. And they didn't check compatibility? He shook his head. "They're going to break the pipeline," I said quietly. "They already have," he replied. "One of our financial services clients called this morning. Something's not syncing. I think she tried testing the migration on a live account." My stomach dropped. "That violates protocol." Luis nodded slowly. "I know." I spent that afternoon doing what I do best, quietly collecting facts. I pulled system logs, performance reports, uptime stats, and I drafted an email. Not to Zara, not to Graham, but to the one group they were too distracted to monitor. The board. Subject: operational risks and transition oversight. I attached proof of the live migration test that interrupted client data, a Slack screenshot showing Zara giving verbal approval with no documentation, and internal documentation that flagged the new vendor as not compliant in a 2021 audit. No opinions, no emotion, just the facts. I clicked send at 5:42 p.m. Then I packed my things and went home. At 7:03 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered anyway. "Kelly, this is Celeste Adami, chair of Trident's board." Her voice was direct but measured. "I'd like to set up a call with you first thing tomorrow." "Of course," I said, calm but alert. "And Kelly?" she added. "Thank you for flagging this." She already knew. She'd seen the signs. They all had. They just hadn't had proof until now. Friday's all-hands meeting went ahead like nothing was wrong. Zara stood at the front, full TED Talk mode. New colors, new values, even a new slogan. "Where legacy ends, the future begins." I almost laughed out loud. The irony? The very system she was standing on, the data feeding her demo, was still mine. She didn't even know how to check the status logs. She couldn't tell real-time metrics from a mocked report, and I knew that because I built the system to flag fakes. I watched it blink red as her presentation went live. After the meeting, she stopped by my desk. "You seemed quiet today," she said with a smile too wide to be sincere. "Don't worry. We'll find something that fits your skill set eventually." I looked at her and said nothing, because behind her, walking calmly down the corridor in a navy suit and heels, was Celeste. She passed Zara without a word and stopped at my desk. "Kelly?" she said. "Could I borrow you for a few minutes?" Zara turned slowly, confusion spreading across her face. I stood up, nodded once, and followed Celeste down the hall. We sat in a private conference room. The curtains were half drawn, the lighting soft. Celeste opened a slim folder and looked at me. "Everything you submitted checked out," she said. "You've been holding this company together longer than anyone acknowledged." I didn't speak. I didn't need to. "We're calling an emergency executive session next week," she continued. "I want you there. You'll brief the board directly." I exhaled slowly. For the first time in weeks, I felt it. Not victory, not revenge. Something deeper, recognition. Monday came colder than usual. Not outside, inside the building. There was a shift in the air, the kind you can't explain but you feel in the way people avoid eye contact or whisper behind coffee cups. The office buzz was gone. The usual Monday morning banter replaced by cautious silence. No more jokes about Zara's slogans, no more loud greetings, just controlled breathing. I walked in early, as always. Luis was already at his desk. He gave me a small nod, the kind you give someone right before a storm breaks. On my desk sat a sealed envelope. No sender listed. Inside was a single sheet of cream paper with a Trident Systems letterhead. Invitation to executive session. Confidential Tuesday, 10 a.m. Boardroom B. Attendees, Board of Directors, Legal Counsel, Kelly Rao, Interim Advisory Oversight. Provisional, no Zara. No Graham. The rest of Monday passed in slow motion. Around 11:30, I saw Zara walk past my desk, phone pressed to her ear, eyes darting. She wasn't smiling anymore. By noon, she'd called a leadership sync with the department heads. I wasn't invited. Neither was Celeste. But Luis was. He came back 40 minutes later and sat down at my desk like someone trying not to look panicked. "She's scrambling," he whispered. "She said anyone resisting the restructure is slowing innovation. She even suggested replacing the infrastructure team with newer talent." I blinked slowly. "She doesn't know half the infra team built the thing she's standing on," I said. Luis nodded. "She also said something about bringing in external branding consultants. High cost, fast turnaround." "They're draining capital," I said flatly. "And she doesn't realize the burn rate is visible to the board." "She thinks she has time," he said. "She doesn't." That afternoon, I met with Celeste in a small conference room on the 18th floor. She had a notepad, a black pen, and zero small talk. "We'll open with a review of Zara's decisions over the last 30 days, she said. "I want you to present a factual sequence. Client interruptions, procedural breaches, budgetary anomalies." "No personal comments?" I asked. She shook her head. "We'll let the data speak. We're not here to humiliate her. We're here to protect the company." "I understand." She looked at me carefully. "You've played this with more grace than most executives I've seen." "Thank you," I said. "But grace is not the same as silence." Celeste's mouth twitched, a hint of a smile. Tuesday arrived with heavy clouds and the weight of long-buried truths. I walked into Boardroom B at exactly 9:59. Celeste was already seated. So was Darnell from Finance, Angela from Legal, and two external observers I didn't recognize. Likely advisors or potential partners. Graham walked in 5 minutes late, pale and stiff. He sat at the far end, hands folded, saying nothing. Zara didn't show. Celeste opened the session calmly. "We're here to assess the transition strategy and its impact on operational continuity. Ms. Rao has provided data for review." I stood and connected my laptop. No speech, no emotion. Just a clean timeline of cause and effect. Live migration without testing protocol. Client X's service interruption. Unauthorized outsourcing request with flagged vendor. Projected Q3 overages due to external rebranding bids. Internal morale drop supported by HR's own employee engagement pulse check. When I finished, I stepped back and closed the laptop. Silence filled the room. Then Daniel Renner, CEO of a tech partner company and potential acquisition candidate, leaned forward. "Ms. Rao," he said, "are you aware that Zara requested full transition control in upcoming integration talks?" My eyes flicked to Celeste, then back to Daniel. "I'm aware now." She sent over a pitch deck suggesting full replacement of all legacy systems. No mention of who built or maintained them. "That's a critical omission," I said. Daniel nodded. "It was noted." After the meeting, Graham stopped me in the hallway. His shoulders sagged. He looked smaller than I remembered. "I never meant for it to go this far," he said. "You didn't stop it either," I replied. He nodded slowly. "She's my daughter." "I understand," I said. "But I was your partner, and you forgot that." He didn't respond. As I turned to leave, he added, "They're going to remove her, aren't they?" "That's not my decision," I said. "But you should prepare her." That evening, I went home and pulled out the file I kept in the bottom drawer, labeled simply, "Build Phase, 2018. Inside was the architecture diagram I'd drawn in pen 5 years ago. No software, no automation, just lines and logic on paper. It was still valid, still running, and still mine. I took a photo of the page and saved it under a new folder. Legacy equals value, because they can replace titles. They can change logos. But you can't replace the people who built the bones of something and kept it alive through every storm. Wednesday morning felt different. People weren't whispering anymore. They were watching. The atmosphere in the office had changed. Not with fear, but with anticipation. Every movement felt deliberate. Every conversation measured. Zara hadn't shown up that morning. Her name was still on the whiteboard in what used to be my office, but her chair sat empty. The rumors had started circulating before noon. That the board had frozen her transition plan, that legal had asked her to pause all strategic directives, that she'd left crying the day before. None of that came from me. I hadn't said a word. I didn't need to. By now, the system was speaking for me. At 11 a.m., I met Celeste in a quiet corner of the executive floor. "We've scheduled a full vote for Friday," she said, her tone cool and professional, "on formalizing the advisory team and removing Zara from interim leadership." I nodded once. "You have the numbers?" "We do," she said. "After yesterday's presentation, 2 of the undecideds flipped. One said he couldn't believe Graham signed off on any of this." "He didn't," I said. "He just didn't stop it." Celeste studied me. "You could have gone public with this. Leaked it. Blown the whole thing up from the outside." "I don't want to destroy Trident," I said quietly. "I just want it to remember what it is." She looked down at her notes, then closed them. "We'll want you in the room." Back on the floor, I returned to my desk and opened my inbox. One message stood out. Subject: Concerned client requesting escalation sender. Vanessa H., client success. Inside: "Hi, Kelly. Just got off a call with client Delta. They're reporting instability in the dashboard. They say it's not syncing overnight reports. Said they've reached out twice this week and gotten vague answers. Do you know what's going on?" I felt a chill run down my spine. Delta was one of our oldest clients. One of the clients I brought in, back when we were fighting just to make payroll. Losing them would send the wrong signal to every client watching. I opened the back-end monitor and pulled the sync logs. Sure enough, 3 failures in 4 days, all linked to a patch Zara's team pushed live without routing through QA. No rollback. No escalation chain. They thought no one would notice, but clients always notice. I called Vanessa directly. "Get me 10 minutes with their lead. I'll take the call personally." "Already scheduled for 2 p.m., she said. "They requested you specifically." Of course they did. At 1:58, I closed my door. At 2 o'clock sharp, I was face-to-face with Client Delta's head of operations over Zoom. "I appreciate you joining the call," he said, his voice clipped. "I'll be blunt. If this instability isn't resolved by Friday, we're pulling our contract." I didn't flinch. "You're right to be frustrated," I said. And I'll take full responsibility for restoring the system. You're not even listed on the current leadership roster anymore. I looked him in the eye. Yet here I am. There was a pause. We don't want to leave, he said finally. We just want what we were promised. And you'll have it. After the call, I rolled back Zara's faulty patch and reactivated our original sync tool, the one I built by hand when Trident was still running lean. The logs lit up green. Clean, fast, no errors, system restored. By Thursday, news had spread. The client hadn't left. The system had stabilized, and I was the one who fixed it. Luis walked past my desk that morning, coffee in hand. You just bought us time, he whispered. Not time, I said. Breathing room. Then I opened a new document titled Advisory Proposal, Foundation Model. It outlined a transition plan not based on slogans or hashtags, but on history, data, and respect. Later that afternoon, I got a knock on my door. It was Graham. He looked tired. Not the kind of tired from work, the kind that comes from watching something unravel too late to stop it. Can we talk? I gestured to the chair across from me. He sat, hands folded in his lap. I spoke to Zara, he said. She's stepping back, voluntarily. I raised an eyebrow. She wanted to prove herself. She thought you were in the way. I wasn't, I said. I was the foundation. He nodded. I know that now. There was a long silence. I'm sorry, Kelly, he said. Truly. I believe you, I said. But the apology is for me. The accountability? That's for the board. He didn't argue. He just nodded once, stood up, and left the room. That night, I worked late. I reviewed legacy systems, cleaned up permissions, and forwarded key documentation to Celeste's assistant. I wasn't building a case anymore. I was reinforcing a company. Because leadership isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the one who still shows up when everyone else has given up. And on Friday, they would decide. Not about who gave the best speech, but about who actually kept the lights on. Friday morning arrived with that strange hush. Not quiet, but controlled. The kind of silence that fills a building before something shifts for good. Everyone knew what was coming. No one said it out loud. But the eyes said enough. I arrived at Trident HQ early. My badge still worked. My name was still in the system. No one dared greet me with pity anymore. Now they looked at me with something else. Recognition. The boardroom was full when I walked in. Celeste sat at the head of the table, calm as always. Graham was there too, seated beside two outside consultants. His expression was unreadable, but the slump in his shoulders gave him away. Zara came in 5 minutes late. No designer tote this time. No glossy smile. Just a neutral blazer, hair tied back, and a face trying to look composed. Celeste opened without small talk. We're here today to vote on finalizing the leadership transition oversight following recent instability and risk exposure. She looked at me, then around the room. Before we vote, Kelly, would you like to say anything? I stood slowly. I didn't come here to claim credit, I said. But I did come to protect what we built. Trident isn't a brand. It's a structure, a system, a promise. And lately, that promise has been stretched thin. I paused. Leadership isn't disruption for the sake of headlines. It's making sure that when things fall, they don't collapse. And I sat back down. Daniel Renaer, seated at the far end, nodded slightly, the kind of nod that comes from years of listening before speaking. Our position remains unchanged, he said. If the current transition plan stays in place, our partnership will not proceed. Graham flinched but didn't speak. Zara's hands trembled slightly on the table. Still no words. Then Celeste turned to the board. All in favor of removing Zara Telford from all leadership duties, effective immediately? One by one, hands raised. No hesitation. All in favor of instating Kelly Rao as Transitional Systems Advisor with full operational veto? Again, unanimous. Zara looked down. The only sound in the room was the scratching of a pen as Celeste signed the final motion. After the meeting, most people left quietly. No chatter, no handshakes, just a building exhaling. Zara stayed behind. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She just stood by the window, staring at the skyline. "I thought I could handle it," she said quietly. "I thought new ideas were enough." I joined her but said nothing. She turned toward me. "You probably hate me." "I don't," I said. "I just wish you'd asked before trying to replace everything you didn't understand." She nodded, then walked out, heels echoing in a room that suddenly felt much larger. Over the next 2 weeks, the real work began. I met daily with engineering, ops, legal, and client services. Not to rewrite everything, just to steady what had been knocked loose. Trident didn't need reinvention. It needed memory, clarity, strength. I brought Luis in as lead of systems continuity. Vanessa stepped up to oversee client transitions. And the people who used to be overlooked now sat at the heart of the company again. Not because of titles, but because they'd earned it. One evening, I stayed late, reviewing an old process map I'd drawn years ago in the margins of a whiteboard photo. The date stamp said 2018. The logic still held. That's what most people forget about solid architecture. It doesn't expire. It adapts. Late that night, I got a message from Celeste. Subject: just so you know. 3 of our longest clients reached out this week. They said whatever changed, they noticed. And they're relieved. That's you, Kelly. Just wanted you to know. I stared at the message for a long time. Not smiling, just breathing. Because the win wasn't in the position. It was in the restoration. They flew me out to celebrate what they thought would be my exit. They thought the future meant younger, louder, shinier. But they forgot something fundamental. You can't build the future if you don't understand the past. And you can't lead a system if you've never walked through its failures. I wasn't loud. I wasn't trending. But I had one thing that outlasts both: value. And this time, I didn't need anyone to give it to me. I took it back. Quietly, powerfully, permanently.